Hey everyone, it's me Lone. Hope you're doing alright. It has been a very long day for me. I've been up since 2 a.m. watching the Bethesda Xbox showcase, and it's currently 4 p.m. I haven't gotten any sleep at all, but there's just one more video that I want to make for you all, and hopefully you appreciate the effort. If you do, I'd really appreciate it if you like this video. It would mean a lot to me. And also, if you're new, please consider subscribing as well. It really does help out the channel. So today, after the Starfield official gameplay reveal, there was a big debate in the community about the specific fact that Starfield's going to have over 1,000 worlds and planets to explore. This was something that Todd understandably stressed in the trailer because it's flashy, it sounds impressive, but as a result of that, people started to get concerned because, as I said in my impressions video, in any game, when you have over 1,000 explorable planets, there is going to be some level of procedural generation, and that's pretty much going to be the case with Starfield, and I'll explain why in a second. But because of that, people are concerned, and I think that there is an understandable level of concern here when they especially see a lot of the landscape shots and the locales in the trailer that are fairly empty, and when they know that procedural generation is needed, there is a concern that a lot of the exploration of these planets in Starfield is going to be a bit of a barren experience. There might not be a lot of things to find, a lot of things to actually see and do when you're exploring these planets. And I wanted to provide my thoughts on this because I believe I was fairly neutral and fairly fair when it came to my impressions about the Starfield gameplay reveal. I said negatives and positives on both sides, but what I didn't do is be completely negative about the procedural generation point, and there was a reason behind that. So let me start off by saying, again, I do understand why people are concerned. I think it's a fair thing to be concerned by, but the reason why I didn't jump on it and why I'm not overly concerned, at least at this stage until we see more, is that procedural generation is not new to Bethesda Game Studios games at all. This is something that has dated back since Arena and Daggerfall. And the reason why I'm saying that, and I'll include the link in the description below, about a couple of years ago, Todd did this interview for Develop Brighton. It was a conference, and he talked a little bit about procedural generation in the games that he's worked on. In particular, again, you know, Daggerfall, Arena, Morrowind, Oblivion. He name drops a few games. And he talked about the role that procedural generation has played in literally every single Bethesda Game Studios game, at least since he'd been at the company. They've used it in every single game, right? And I think that's something that everyone needs to be a little bit aware of. They typically use procedural generation to especially generate the landscape and the world of their games, and then they'll often go back and comb through and fix things up and add the important things, essentially. And Todd especially mentions Oblivion when it comes to this, and if that's a game that you enjoyed, Oblivion's landscapes were actually procedurally generated the first time. What they did was procedurally generate the world and the landscapes and the nature, the trees, the rocks, etc., and then they went back to fix it up to make sure it was how they liked it. That's exactly what happened in Oblivion, and that's what's happened in, as I said, every Bethesda Game Studios game. Todd, in that interview, has said that they like to experiment with some level of procedural generation in all of their games, and then the balance just might differ depending upon which game that it is. I know that Skyrim as well also had a level of procedural generation. They all pretty much do, but Todd did mention that they went away from procedural generation a little bit when it came to their games, but in recent times has started to bring it back much more. And he specifically said when it came to the current stuff that he was working on, i.e. Starfield, that there's going to be a lot more procedural generation. They're going to be doing a lot more when it comes to that compared to the recent games that they've been working on. So I want to stress, procedural generation is not new to Bethesda Game Studios games. It's been a thing for a very long time. But yes, we do need to admit that when it comes to Starfield, especially because of the fact that there's over 1,000 planets, and especially because of the fact that Todd explicitly mentioned it and admitted it on that interview, there is going to be much more procedural generation in this game. And the key is going to be how much time and effort Todd and the team spend going back and adding things. Going back and adding the important things that Todd talked about in that interview. Things to find, things to see, things to touch, the items, you know, that kind of stuff. When it comes to nature and trees and landscapes, Todd admitted, like, computers are pretty good at doing that on their own. Like, you don't necessarily need a developer to sit down and shape how a rock looks like. Like, it's not necessarily important. What's important are the things that players are actually doing in the game and they're touching and feeling. So that's what actually counts. So when it comes to Starfield, Todd and the team are just going to need to spend a lot of time going through and adding that. And is it a tall order? Absolutely it is. It's over 1,000 planets. That's something that they're going to have to do if they wanted to create a space game that involves a lot of exploration. That's something that they're going to have to do. And I guess the question that a lot of you need to ask is whether you wanted a much smaller number or amount of planets to explore in a space game like Starfield and have it more kind of localized in that regard, or a bigger, more expansive game where there's lots of exploration. Maybe there's somewhere in the middle that it could have been, maybe 200 planets, right? Maybe there can be a little bit more handcrafting and care taken with a smaller planet size. But you've just got to determine for yourself where on the balance you sit. For me, if I completely had my way, I would probably say, you know what, like 100 planets. I think 100 planets would have been a nice number because it would allow the team to take much more time and effort and resources to really handcrafting each of those particular planets compared to over 1,000. Because when you get over 1,000, there's going to be less of that inevitably. Yes, Todd and the team has been working on the game for a very long time, right? So they've obviously had a lot of time to go back and do that handcrafting after the procedural generation. But there's going to be a limit where they just can't do much more because there's so many planets that they want to have in the game. But I'm still not like completely negative over it. You know what I mean? I'm still going to give the team the chance to kind of show what they've done. I think that at the very least, the way I see it is so long as that there is a decent group of planets that do have a lot of interesting things, especially the ones like, you know, the cities, so New Atlantis, cities like that where you go, you explore, you do your side quests, all that kind of stuff. So long as there's a nice group of those kinds of planets, I don't care if the other 800 or 900 are just rando planets with artifacts to find or things, you know, like kind of just a little bit of exploration, things to mine, resourcing, all that kind of stuff. So long as there's a solid game there, procedurally generate the rest of it and do a little bit of handcrafting, because I guess the alternative is you don't have a game that's as big to explore. You don't have an actual space exploration game. And if you want your space exploration game to be at least somewhat realistic or at least kind of, you know, grounded in realism, then yes, there are some planets that are going to be a little bit barren. It's a tough one, and you even saw in this video, I've gone back and forth with it, but I just want to kind of make the case that procedural generation is not something to be scared about, right? It's something that BGS has done in the past, and if you've ever liked a BGS game in the past, there has been a level of procedural generation in it, right? Skyrim, Oblivion, etc., etc. So don't be so scared of it. But I think there is some understandable hesitance when it comes to the level of procedural generation that Todd and the team are going to be doing in Starfield. Again, would I have preferred a smaller number of planets? For sure. But we're going to get the bigger one, and we'll see how they handle it. But I'm not going to jump on their case straight away. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, this has been Lone. Please take care of yourselves, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.